Hey, security peeps, it is Renee Small. I am back here again in our Breaking Into Cybersecurity podcast webinar series. I am excited to be here today with my fabulous co host, Chris Foulon.
Hey
Say hi,
everyone.
everybody, Chris. And we have Eric Kimani here. He is our special guest for today. Say hi to everyone, Eric.
Hello, everyone.
And Eric is visiting us from the UK, which is always awesome to get folks that are international so they can share their stories with us. And I will just jump right into this. I know Eric has such an interesting story. It took him years eventually to break in. We were just chatting about him, taking 7, 8 years to break into the industry. So Eric, I'm just going to jump right in and ask you, tell me what you were doing beforehand. Tell the audience what you were doing beforehand and what got you interested in cybersecurity and how you eventually broke into the industry.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Chris. It's nice to be here. Well, my story is a bit unconventional, if I may use that word, because previously I actually had a career in the hotel business. And I'd been in the hotel business for the longest time possible. And at one point, I just got fed up. I thought, I can't be doing this. I didn't want to go into management or any of that. And I thought, right. But I had a lot of interest in IT side of things. In my job in the UK, I was working in a conference center. And so you had to do a lot of on the side IT work. The customers would show up. They needed connecting to the wireless. You start troubleshooting. They would come in, or they needed to set up some audio, video stuff, for presentation, all that. So over time, my interest really grew from there, and I thought, well, maybe I should take a few courses here and there. So I did a bit of A+, didn't finish. Took up a bit of N+, didn't finish as usual, but I kept going though. But at one point, I had enough. I said, that's it. So I was looking at, and where I live is right next to 2 universities. So really, that was enough to tell me it was time to go back to school. So I saw this course, and I thought, you know what, that's what I need to do. So I went part-time for my job. Went back to university for 3 years, and I took a bachelor's in computer forensics, which was quite interesting because you're sat there, pretty much everybody in the class is younger than you. They're still fresh from school, and I'm thinking, flipping heck, what is going on here? I mean, the modules, I just hated pretty much the programming side of things. I hated that. I actually flunked my JavaScript course, and I had to retake it again. And but I noticed something though, that when it came to the networking course, I actually enjoyed it a lot more than anything else. Anyway, fast forward, I graduate, and I can't get a job in forensics because I really want to go into forensics, digital forensics. So I couldn't get a job, and I thought, well, I'll take the first job that comes up. So I go for an interview, get a job with HP, or it used to be HP back then. I think it's merged with other companies now. So get a job as application support. That was really interesting. I got this job. I enjoyed it. I was doing application support, incident management, pretty much everything put together. So I was with HP for about 2 years, but even then, I was trying to build connections with people in security. But the only problem was the security function of the business was in another city. So I couldn't really move there, and it wasn't as big. So I thought, well, it's what it is. But I kept a lot of my reading, a lot of my personal study was geared towards security. So I kept going. So in the last 6, 7 years, I've had roles from incident management, application support, first line and second line, Windows platforms, Linux platforms, databases, which I don't like. And I've had roles in a bit of testing as well. And I warn anyone out there, if you're going to go into testing, just be sure what you're getting yourself into. Because for me, it was a nightmare, is testing. but I did it anyway. And when I look back, it all adds up. It all adds up in the end, because my current company that I work for, I joined as a second line application support, but my main aim really was so that I could transition eventually to the cybersecurity side of the company, and that's what I did. That was the best way for me to get in, and that was a year ago. So that's how I I I ended up in cybersecurity. But I took the long road. So it was it. I needed a lot of patience and waiting and self study just to prepare to get there. So to answer your question, that's how I actually ended up where I am right now. But it was the long road.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that you know, what when I speak to you, Eric, and everyone else that we've talked to over the past couple months, one of the things that um, is so fascinating is your resilience and your persistence. And it keeps coming up over and over again that,
I
you
agreed.
know, the goal, this was the goal. And even though it took me 7 years, like, I'm going to get there. Even though you got the computer forensics degree, like, you
Precisely.
got a
Yeah,
degree in the space and backdoored your way into getting into a company to
yeah,
eventually grow and transition to get into where you want to be now. And look at
yeah.
all of the different steps. Like, look at all of the different roles that you took that you didn't like. There's so many nuggets and so many, I think, takeaways from that. One being that you know what you don't like, you know
Oh
what.
yes, they're the things you wouldn't like. Like I said, I hate databases, I hate programming, but from a security perspective, I realize these are ingredients that you will need. So, for instance, I take up a lot of courses on, say, Udemy and all other platforms, not particularly because I really need these courses, but I realize if I'm going to understand how web applications get attacked, then I need to understand how web applications work.
Right.
So, I take up a course on, web development, JavaScript, and on all these languages, but I don't go very deep. I sort of just I want to understand just how they work. And I find that really helps me. It actually informs my day-to-day job.
That curiosity is critical because a lot of the times you'll find yourself in many of the different verticals within security that you have to know a little bit about everything, and
True.
then when you come across a problem, then you have to know where to go to dig into it. But if you didn't have
Correct.
that surface level knowledge,
Right.
it's hard to know where to dig into it. And like you said, it all added up. It all became part of you to make you who you are, to prepare you for this role.
Indeed. And what I always say is, I may not be, like, say, a server engineer, but I want to know how, say, Windows Server 2012 works. I can .ISO copy and just, plow through it, see what it's all about. I can easily download any, Linux distro and, you know, find out how does it really work. What's in it that can inform me, in the future. Because you read a lot about, oh, web applications are vulnerable from A to Z. But then I really want to understand what do they mean. But like with everything else, it's either sitting on a network. So understanding how networks work, I've found is very important. There's probably a backend database sitting somewhere. That understanding does help, and it probably has a front end web application. I want to understand how that works, and the world that we live in now, everything is sitting somewhere on a cloud. I want to understand how that works. So, like you're saying, Chris, in security, I have found you have to be curious. If you're not curious, then the whole security, field will just be a mess for you. You will not like it at all because it's
Uh,
that
uh,
many aspects of it.
and that's something I've seen come up over and over again. And a lot of people might go, oh, there's a lot of money in this field, but you will get burnt out so quickly if you're
Agreed.
not in it for the right reasons.
Agreed.
And if you don't have that passion to learn and that passion to truly understand about it, you're going to end up burning yourself out and not being happy. But then
Agreed.
I'm sure Renee loves the story that you're telling, that you're curious, you're learning, you're always trying to figure out more, because that's what employers want to hear.
And on top of that, because I enjoy what I do, it makes it a lot easier. So I have to admit, I spend a lot of time sitting in front of my computer just learning something. It might not be related, but I want to know how it works. I might not be able to use it every day, but I know someday down the line I will bump into it. And then when I bump into it, I already have the knowledge. I'm not thinking, oh, you know what, I should have learned about this years ago. I don't want to get to that point where I'm needing to know something so urgently. I want to prepare for that time. But again, like I said, I do enjoy security and how it works. And of course, and like you said, Chris, it's because it's so wide, it's so easy to think, well, there's money in it, but then you need to know what you're doing though. If you're going to be good, if you're going to earn top money, you have to be really, really good. Because you can only blank your way in so much before you're found out, and that's the last thing you want. And again, Renee, you mentioned something about interviews, and anytime I go for an interview, the first thing I say to whoever is interviewing me, I tell them I'm the kind of person who, if I don't know, if don't know an answer to your question, I will tell you I don't know. But I can guarantee you I know how to find my answers. Google is your friend. We've got Google. I mean, gone are the days when they used to write code on paper. And I do remember when I first started and when I was doing my application support, and we had a migration project from one city to where we were living, where we were working. We had to go down and get code that was written in folders. It was all on paper. And you're thinking, wow, because they were still using a lot of legacy applications, but this is not stuff you can Google. If you don't know the answer, you just don't know the answer. And to be fair, I'm talking mainframe applications and that type of stuff, So again, it was a learning experience. I learned a lot from that time. But any question that crosses my mind, and I'm thinking, oh, how do I figure this out? Any error messages, it pops up, and boom, it's somewhere on Google. So the curiosity, the willingness to want to do your research, I have found helps me a lot in my day-to-day work, and generally in security. I think a lot of your own personal research, your own personal time in testing things out comes in handy. Not two ways to it.
Such valid points. There's similarities with you and so many of the folks that we've had on, and on top of the curiosity that Chris talked about and the persistence, one of the similarities I think is the continuous learning that everyone is looking to do, and that you just learn about new things all the time, and that makes you such a better. It's one of the things that many companies, I know for a fact, managers as a whole, leaders, this is what they beg for.
Right.
Companies, some companies are 100% focused on bringing people on who they know will be continuous learners, who are just, the curiosity again, jumping in and learning something new and understanding, because the more knowledge that you have and the more, little pieces of what looks like disparate information will come together.
Yep, you're back.
While we wait for Renee to come back, how do you keep up with the industry?
Like I say, Chris, I do a lot of reading. Most of my reading is security related. I follow a lot of podcasts, a lot of maybe way too many podcasts. I take courses. I read a lot of articles from most of the usual outlets, the likes of Wired, Computer Weekly, that type of stuff. So, and I do follow a lot of security guys on Twitter as well and LinkedIn, because I find I learn a lot from these people, because they're seasoned, they've been in the industry long enough. So I follow them a lot, and that does help me to keep me updated, because security changes every day. So yeah.
No, definitely, I agree with you. It's one of the things that I do as well. I have a whole list of podcasts on my profile, as well as RSS feeds that I monitor for new articles that are coming in, things like that. Twitter, LinkedIn. So outside of your education, you mentioned you started some certifications. What's your view on education, certification, or hands-on experience?
Good question.
What's your preference?
I know that's a hot topic. And just to backtrack a bit, speaking of feeds, news feeds, I use Feedly a lot. That it's a like an RSS aggregator. Feedly does a brilliant job of putting it all together. And there's another tool that I use for Twitter. It pretty much gathers all your Twitter feeds that are important together. Now I can't remember the name, but I'll put it on the chat when I remember. Yeah, so I use that a lot. Now back to certification. Now you will hear people say, "Oh yeah, forget certification. You just want to be a certificate." What's the name they use for such people? Certificate warrior or something. And I say, "Oh, you just want?" But again, it's for me, it's very personal. I don't care. I care for what I get out of this the learning process. It's not so much, here, I've got a certificate, this is good, I've got the degree, this is good. No, it's what I have learned, it's what I'm learning from this material, for me, that really counts. Because if I could pick a book, say, right, I've done Security Plus and SSCP, sorry, and for very good reason. I took up Security Plus because I just wanted to broaden my knowledge, broaden my horizon a bit when it comes to that end. Because unfortunately, security for most is only deemed as a technology problem. Security is not a technology problem. Security is a combination of technology, people, and processes. And I remember some time back, well, some time back, I was reading about, so you want to be a cybersecurity to get in the industry, you have to pick a side. Are you the technology person, or are you the people process person? And I know myself, I love the people process side of cybersecurity. However, I want to know how the technology works. So that's why I will, spin up a lab at home, try out different things. I'll take a course, on web application, that kind of stuff. So I'm all for the, for a holistic approach to cybersecurity, as opposed to, oh yeah, I'm one-sided. Now you'll hear the techies go, yeah, forget all that governance, risk, and compliance stuff. Forget it. And then you'll hear the other people, the GRC people go, oh, hold on one second, you can't do your technology without us. And there's this battle of, oh, we are better than that, you're better. To me, it's a whole lot of nonsense, because I don't care how good I get in whichever field, in the technology, in the governance, risk, and compliance side of things. If my skills are not supporting the business, they're pointless. So I can write 10,000 lines of code to do A, B, C, D. But if this is not supporting the business, that's not good. So maybe I'm the guru in GDPR, but if that's not supporting the business, what good is it? It's not good. It's not good for me. So
no, I hear you. Chris Roberts is one of the gentlemen that I see as a mentor, and one of the things that I've seen his school of thought is that
Right.
you can't just have technology. You have to have the people and the process, and you have to work with the business, because
Agree.
you can throw all the technology at it all day, and it won't help if the people are not following the instructions, or they don't see why a password is important, or
Correct.
why not clicking on the link is important. All these
Correct.
little things.
Right.
So to kind of circle back, tell us about your journey, transitioning from not security to security. How many
Right.
interviews did you go on? Tell us the dirty details.
All right. Right. Now, just I have to mention Chris Roberts is one of my favorites. I've learned a lot from him. I met him last year in London for the DevSecOps meeting, and he's incredible. He
Oh,
gave
nice.
me a lot of information, a lot of help. You know, so you get to learn from these people, and I agree with you. His thinking is whatever it is, it's got to support the business. Anyway, so how did I get in? The my I would say my interview was not, because I was an internal candidate. It wasn't as how do I put it? It wasn't as difficult as if I was an outside candidate. So I had more like an internal advantage, if you like. But then again, my approach was join the company, but because I know this company has a big cybersecurity function, that's where I want to end up. So I made it very clear to my manager from the beginning that further down the line, this is what I really want to go into. And and I was doing second line support, and but my thinking, my direction was going towards cybersecurity. So when I got interviewed for the cybersecurity role, the interview was very interesting. But of course, there were gaps in my knowledge. And it was very clear in my interview. I say, right, I don't think your networking in particular is. And I said, yes, I know my networking is not where it's supposed to be, but I need to get my networking skills up to scratch. So I think when it comes to interviews, identifying your skills gap is very important, and being honest with where the gaps are and how are you going to fill these gaps. That for me is key. So internally, it wasn't that challenging. But here's another thing that I do is just for practice. I will apply for a job and I will go for get an interview, and I'll go for the interview just to get interview practice. And I've learned a lot, and the kind of questions they ask, what they're looking for, and you learn a lot, because interviewing is a skill by itself. There's the interviewing part of the skills, and then the knowledge, subject knowledge of the area you're being interviewed in. So you need to have all these. So you need to know how to get through the interview. First
Yeah,
of all,
yeah.
how to get your resume through the CV, we call it, how to get it through so that you can get an interview. So those are skills just by themselves. So first of all, if you don't get your CV right, your chances are you're not getting an interview. And when you get an interview, you're not getting a job if you don't perform very well on the interview. It doesn't particularly mean you don't know your stuff. So these are other skills, I would say soft skills that you need as well. So yeah, with the interviewing, you also have to research the company. You have to research the company, know what they do, and be genuinely interested in what they do. But it all goes back to targeting. How do you target? Do you have a list of the companies you would like to work for? Do you have connections with the right people? Say, for instance, on LinkedIn, do you know who the sort of decision makers are? You have to start engaging with these people way in advance before you actually need a job. That's the way I see it. So build that connection, so when the day comes and you need it, you're already past the first gate. That's the approach I like to use.
And do you build those connections just on LinkedIn, just on Twitter? Do you go to local meetups or conferences? How do you do that?
Right. It's a combination of basically the three things you mentioned. I don't go to as many meetups as I would like. Well, partly because I work. My role is a shift role, so I work all sorts of shifts. So sometimes that's my excuse. But I do, like I say, last year I did attend the DevSecOps meeting in London. Great. You bumped people like Mark Miller of part of the Phoenix project. You made the likes of Chris Robert. So you build connections with people who have connections that you can follow and learn from as well. And yeah, so I have to say, I don't go to as many meetups as I would, but I do contact people a lot on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and I contribute as well. So it's a community effort. Let's put it that way.
And speaking of community, what do you do to become part of that community? Do you give back? What do you do to keep building that passion for the community?
You have to give back, and by giving back, in most cases, say for instance, there's a role going at my job, or there's a role going. Some a recruiter probably has contacted you saying, "Well, I've got a role here," and if it's something I'm not interested in, I would say, "Listen, I know someone else who might be interested in," and I would refer them to this person, or I would refer someone to my job and say, "Well, there's a role going. Why don't you try it?" So I try to contribute that way. Or if say I come across a really interesting article, and I'll share that on LinkedIn, or whatever it is I'm reading, I'll just throw that in on my LinkedIn feed. And it's that engagement that I find that it actually helps me to learn and to be updated on what's happening, because cybersecurity it's not like physics. The laws of physics don't change. Cybersecurity changes every day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and if you're not updated, you'll be looking at things that happened last year and thinking, "Oh, is this new?" It's like, no, that's what's going down at the moment. So being current for me is crucial.
Yeah.
And part of it is learning from other people.
So based on we're approaching the top of the hour, or the top of the
Yeah,
half hour now.
right.
So time for like the last question. So in summary,
Right.
what advice, what sage piece of advice would you give to someone coming along this journey that you've went through, that you think would be the most beneficial to them?
I think the most important thing is to first of all, I would say have a plan. Have a plan, write it down. Write it down and follow through. But you need to have a very concrete plan. But the other thing is you have to be very patient with yourself. I mean, from the time I graduated, from the time I actually got my first security gig, we're looking at 6-7 years. But don't forget, whatever else you're doing now, work with that. Use that. Don't wait until you get to a point where you need the skills. Start learning. Start building up your say your arsenal of tools to get to where you need to go. You got to start now. It's not
Yeah.
going to happen. You have to start now. For instance, I'm way below the 5-year mark for getting a CISSP, but I've started studying for that material.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
you have to go on.
I was going to say, with the CISSP, you could always get the associates, and then as you
Precisely.
build up the experience, you can then
Exactly.
qualify for that. But
Right, and that's my attitude exactly. I don't want to get to 5 years and think, "Oh, now I've got to do this CSSP." I'm thinking, no, I do it now, get it out of the way. So yeah, all I'm saying is the last thing I would say is and I use this a lot. I would say for everything there is a price to pay, but the question is not when are you going to pay the price. The question is when are you willing to start paying the price, because you got to start. If you want something, you got to start somewhere. Start doing it yourself, and then you'll be surprised, because the rest of it will just start coming together as you go along. You start meeting the right people, you start bumping into the right, materials and tools. You never know. Just start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you.
It's been a real pleasure. Unfortunately, we lost Renee,
Right, yeah.
but
She had to look
luckily
at her kid.
we're
Yeah.
still able to continue.
Correct.
So thank you very much, and have a great day.
And you too. Have a good afternoon. Cheers. Thanks a lot, Chris. See you
Yep. Take
later.
care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.